Hello and welcome to our webinar today on sponsor licenses, license applications and management. My name is Papia. We will do formal introductions in a second and my colleague will be able to introduce herself as well. But today's webinar is based on the sponsor license route offered by the Home Office. And in this webinar, we will be looking at the overall route as well as different segments that come along to make up the sponsor license application, as well as a top tip section right at the end. So without further ado, I will introduce myself first. So my name is Papia Kabir. I am a paralegal here at Woodcock Law and Notary Public. I specialise in the sponsor license applications, and most of my clientele are small to medium-sized enterprises. I am also a certified acceptance agent for Woodcock Law and Notary Public. But again, you have clicked onto this webinar for the immigration route. So I will pass over to my colleague Roshni, who also will be co-hosting this webinar with me.
Hi everyone, my name is Roshni and I am a paralegal working alongside Papia, also specialising in both corporate and personal immigration. I deal with the process after the sponsor licence application process, so that being the skilled worker visa application.
If you do want to get in contact with us following watching our webinar, our LinkedIn handles are on the screen as well as our telephone numbers. We are reachable via text, call and also WhatsApp. So if you do want to get in contact, please do. So I'm just going to move through the slides. Before we do go on to what Woodcock Law specialises in, for those who have joined us on this webinar today, and if you are watching this after the webinar, we are delighted to offer you a free 10-minute consultation if you quote webinar 10 in your inquiry. So whether that's telephone, email, or WhatsApp audio call, we would be delighted to offer you the free 10-minute consultation to go through the sponsor license application and deem your eligibility for the route, as well as plan next steps. So I'll leave that on the screen for a few more seconds just so you can take a screenshot or write it down. And again, we do look forward to taking forward these conversations with you and making sure that your business is in the best possible shape for a sponsor license. So I will just move forward.
Okay, so just a little bit about what we do here at Woodcock Law and Notary Public. So we do specialise in immigration law as well as offering notary services, which go hand in hand with the legalisation and apostille services. We also offer visa and consular services as well as ITIN services, so dealing directly with the IRS in order to obtain ITIN numbers for individuals claiming tax from the IRS.
So as you can see on the screen, we are accredited by various governing bodies. So we've got the Law Society, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and a few others that we do work in. So if you do want to get in touch with any of the other areas that we work on, again, please do let us know. So moving on to the main section of what a sponsor license is, I'm just going to... Okay, so just before I go on to what a sponsor license is, if you've clicked onto this webinar, you are probably thinking, why would I need a sponsor license? So I'm just going to set the scene for you, because usually if you can, identify yourself within one of the categories that I'm about to mention, it would be a route that you might want to look into and explore further. So typically the clients that I get that are looking for a sponsor license or don't realize they need a sponsor license are those that are currently having issues with, stabilizing and ensuring that they have the correct number of employees. They are currently having and facing the issues with the employment market and the employee crisis. So they are looking to fill various vacant roles. And they just want to make sure that their business is expanding. So those individuals that do contact us are often those that have various vacancies and they're looking to fulfill them with migrant workers, just because the UK market right now doesn't offer them the support that they need. So a sponsor license is where the best route is made available, just because it does allow you to, once you have been granted a sponsor license, it allows your UK business to hire foreign workers for a period of 3 to 5 years, depending on which route you want to go down. This webinar is tailored towards the skilled worker route, so we will only be talking about the skilled worker route with the sponsor license. But just to mention, you are able to add on additional routes once you have been granted, and if there is a genuine business need. So if you are looking to add on the student route or any of the global mobility routes, that is something that, again, we can touch base on in a consultation. So a sponsor license itself, in a nutshell, is a license given to UK businesses that have met the UK threshold in terms of the Home Office rules and in line with Appendix A. Once granted your sponsor license, it is valid for 4 years. but you will need to make sure that you are being compliant. So if you have joined us on the webinar and you do already have an existing sponsor license and have queries about how to make sure you are being compliant, do get in touch, because it is something that we can assist with as well. At the end of your 4 years, there is an opportunity to do a renewal of your sponsor license. Again, further details can be disclosed if and when you are ready to go through that process. But effectively, once you have your sponsor license, you are ready to go with the skilled worker aspect of getting a license and making sure that you are able to sponsor the migrants that you obtain the sponsor license for. So I'm just going to pass over to my colleague Roshni, who will go through the core components of a sponsor license before we go into the screening process.
Okay, so just a little bit about what you can do once your sponsor license has been granted. So the first thing to note is that once your sponsor license has been granted, you'll have access to the sponsorship management system, SMS for short. And one of the key features that you'll be able to use this for is to obtain and assign certificates of sponsorship to the individuals that you're looking to hire. So essentially, that is where you will input all the individuals' details, and that is how you will monitor the individual's employment, whilst they are working with the company.
Just another note on the SMS system. If your authorising officer no longer wants to fulfil that role, or they wish to just terminate their role for the purposes of leaving the company, that is something again that we can assist with. It is a compliance issue that we would flag, and we would assist you with replacing your authorising officer and making sure that your sponsor license, once granted, is still being compliant in terms of the Home Office. One thing to also note, once you have been granted, though the chances are quite slim, the Home Office may still wish to audit you as part of the process. So in the case of an audit, we do always ensure that the sponsor license is up to date and you are following all the correct procedures, just to make sure that your license is intact and you are given the best rating. The rating scale that we always aim towards is the best rating, which is A rated. So all of the sponsor license that we operate and help here at Woodcock Law Notary Public, all of ours have been A rated sponsors. If you have joined this webinar and you have been rated B or lower, and you want to speak to us about how to upgrade your sponsor license or any issues with your sponsor license, again, the consultation is available to those who wish to seek that advice.
So in regards to the certificates of sponsorship, I know I touched upon this very briefly in the previous slide. So the important thing to note is that there are two kinds of certificates of sponsorship. So one being a defined certificate of sponsorship, which refers to out-of-country applications, so where individuals will be coming over to the UK to work for the company from another country. And then you have undefined certificates of sponsorship, which refer to applications that are being made within the UK. What we tend to see typically is this is usually students that are in the UK on a student visa and are switching over to the skilled worker route. So that is when you would use an undefined certificate of sponsorship. The process for assigning these certificates of sponsorship are essentially the same. So you will need their main details, passport details, national insurance number if they have one, driving license number if they have one of those as well. And then you will input that onto an application type form. And then you'll be able to assign it to that individual. And then any changes to the migrant's employment with the company, they will be able to amend accordingly using their certificate of sponsorship.
Okay, so moving on to the SOC code mapping process. So here at Woodcock Law, we do also assist with SOC code mapping. This covers the job description for the candidate that you are looking to sponsor. So we would assist you going through the codes of practices and also the SOC code salary banding to make sure that you are choosing the right SOC code for your candidate, just because this is something that gets flagged up by the Home Office. And as part of the sponsor license application, we do need to disclose at least one vacant position with the correct SOC code mapping process being applied. So again, our expert team here at Woodcock Law Notary Public can assist you with this, just to make sure that your job descriptions are meeting the requirements of the Home Office, and also that your salary being quoted is correct. Just to flag up at this stage as well, SOC codes that we use need to follow the 39-hour working week timetable offered by the Home Office. So any SOC codes that we are provided or any inquiries relating to job descriptions, we will also make sure is in line with Appendix Skilled Worker, just to make sure that all the requirements are ticked and satisfied on our end as well as the Home Office's end. So any questions about SOC code mapping can be answered in a consultation and a one-to-one meeting with our expert team. So moving back to Roshni, I'll let you take over the Authorising Officer.
Okay, so as previously mentioned, you do need to assign a certificate of sponsorship to migrants that you wish to employ for the company, and the individual that will usually do this is the authorising officer. So when putting through a sponsor licence application, you will need to appoint an authorising officer for the purposes of the SMS system, and this authorising officer will usually need to be a British citizen or someone of a settled status in the UK, and will also need to be a senior member of the company, such as a director.
As mentioned previously, if there are any issues with your authorising officer no longer wanting to fulfil that role, or you're wishing to replace them, it is it is a service that we can assist with. It is a request that needs to be put forward to the Home Office formally through the SMS system. And what I would like to stress is just the compliance aspect of a sponsor licence and being a sponsor licence holder here in the UK. It is a very valuable thing to obtain and secure, but once you have it, you need to be making sure that you are being compliant throughout, and therefore making changes like this where needed needs to be done within the appropriate timescale, which is currently 10 working days from being notified. So moving on to the sponsor management system.
Okay, so just a few features of the sponsorship management system. So as mentioned previously, the main feature is that you can assign and renew certificates of sponsorship. You can also manage key personnel, so you can appoint a level 1 user or a new representative for the company, and this person can also help monitor the use of the SMS system to ensure that you are being compliant with the Home Office. You can also report changes of circumstances to the migrant's employment. So as mentioned previously, this is something that you do need to do to ensure you're being compliant. So this includes notifying the Home Office of any changes to the individual's pay, a termination of contract, or a change of work location. You can also use the SMS system to upgrade and renew sponsor licenses. So this is something that needs to be done every 4 years.
Okay, we're just going to move on to the second section of our webinar, where I'll be talking a bit more closely about the sponsor license process itself. By this stage, you should know what a sponsor license is, whether or not you fit into the category of whether or not you need a sponsor license, and the different elements which go into after being granted. But as this webinar is based on the sponsor license process itself, it is only just that we spend quite a significant portion of this webinar going through not only what documentation is required, but also the process from start to end. So the first step would be getting in touch with us through our consultation service. During this 10-minute consultation, we would complete an initial screening. This would include taking down your company house registration number or your company house name. During the call, one of our team members who specialises in the sponsor license department will then log in and just check that your company house record is up to date, check your filing history, your appointment records, and whether or not there's been a change in the company name. We will also check for your incorporation date. This is particularly important if you are then going to be deemed as a startup company, because those who are startup companies do require additional documentation to be provided, which I will touch on later on. As part of the initial screening, we'll also go through the supporting documentation. This includes HMRC filings, so that is the CT603, CT600, and others which I will touch on in a short while. As part of the initial screening, and as the main part of this call is to understand why you are looking and seeking a sponsor license, we will be asking for an employee breakdown and a company breakdown of your current situation, just to see where your vacant roles are, what your position has been like with the Home Office previously, and to see where we can fit in to make sure that this is the correct route for you. And as mentioned by Roshni, we'll also be speaking to you about the certificate of sponsorship for the vacant position that you may have. So again, that will all take place in the 10-minute call once you book in with one of our specialist team members who specialises in the sponsor license front. After the initial screening, what usually happens is the team member will then send you an email confirming our findings on whether or not you are eligible, and then also offer you the next step. So whether that's a further consultation with our principal solicitor, Nathan Woodcock, or we will just jump straight into starting the process with you, which I'm just going to go on to. So as mentioned in the previous slide, supporting documentation is a crucial part of the application process. So when we first engage with you, we try to find out what sort of documents you already have, just so that we can write a list of the outstanding documents and also advise on where the main gaps are in your application. When you submit an application, you only have 5 working days to provide any supporting documentation. So this is why we, emphasize supporting documentation as early as possible in the process, just to make you aware of all the documentation that we need. In terms of supporting documentation, you can see a list of 8 on your screen. The Home Office guidelines only ask for 4 mandatory documents to be provided, but as a rule of thumb here at Woodcock Law, and to make sure that your application has the best chance of success, we always suggest to aim towards a 5 to 6 mark, if not more. The more you can give, the better it is for your company and for the sponsor license application that you are about to submit. In terms of supporting documentation as well, these all have to be in line with Appendix A of the sponsor guidance note. So once we have got your supporting documentation, our principal solicitor, Nathan Woodcock, will go through all the documentation just to make sure that they are correct and have been certified along with Appendix A. So taking each one in turn. So firstly, employer's liability insurance for at least 5 million. Whilst we can't comment on insurance brokerage policies, we can comment from an immigration point of view. So you would need to obtain a certificate confirming that you have employer's liability insurance for the specified amount. Moving on to the current and financial report. Again, this is one that can only be ticked on the application form if it is an audited version. If you have an unaudited financial report, we can include this in the bundle and the supporting documentation, but we just can't tick it on the actual application. So again, if it is unaudited, it won't count towards your 4 threshold. Moving on to HMRC payee and VAT, they do count towards 2 supporting documents, so they are separate individual documents. So again, you would need to set up payroll if you haven't already. HMRC payee is something that we strongly advise that you obtain as you are looking to sponsor migrants who would need to be on your payroll. HMRC VAT is something that, again, is up to conversation with both yourself and your accountant at the time. As we understand, not every company needs to be registered with VAT. There is a threshold. So again, we will take this on a case-by-case basis. From an immigration point of view, if you are able to apply for VAT, we would always suggest that you do so, just because it is a credible piece of evidence that we can use. Moving on to the CT600 and CT603, these again come in a pair, so it would classify as one supporting document. You would need both in order to satisfy this requirement. Just to let you know, the CT603 is no longer provided by the HMRC board. So if you don't have the CT603 or the CT620, do let us know, because we can just address that in the cover letter. Again, bank statements, you would need the last 3 months of bank statements. You would need to make sure that your business is accredited by the FCA and also on the list with the Bank of England and the Prudential list. So again, we will make sure that we take the necessary checks from an immigration point of view to make sure you have your business bank statements in place. Proof of ownership and lease, again, these need to be signed documentation just to show where the business is operating from. Further information can be released upon request, as I know this is one that does get flagged up quite a bit. Governing body registration is one thing that is applicable to those who are registered with, for example, the Food Standard Agency, Halal Monitoring Committee, and also ACCA if you are an accounting board. If you are registered or accredited with another body, do let us know, because we can check through the accreditation and see if it is Home Office approved. A final document, which isn't actually a document required by the application but does need to be submitted, is a hierarchy chart just showing the vacant position and your current employee structure. So again, only 4 need to be provided. The more that you can provide, the better it is for your application. Moving on to the application process, as I mentioned, once we have submitted it, you have 5 days to provide all the documentation to the Home Office. That's why we make sure that all your documents are in place before that mark of submitting it within the 5-day period. Once we have submitted the application, it takes 8 standard weeks for the Home Office to process the application and provide an outcome. There is a priority service available, which is for an additional fee of £500. Again, this is on a case-by-case basis. Depending on the urgency of your matter, we can advise on this, just because a priority service isn't available to every individual, based on capacity as well with our internal team. So again, if priority service is something you're interested in, do flag this up to us so we can make sure the relevant team are aware. In terms of outcome times, as I mentioned, the 8-week mark is one route. There are 3 options that can happen. So either by the 8-week mark, you will be granted your sponsor license and we can move on with the skilled worker application as requested and as planned. If by week 7 or week 8, the Home Office aren't satisfied with the application because they want to do further checks on their end, which they are allowed to do so, they will send in a further information request. Usually this is regarding the HR systems that you have in place, as they need to make sure that you are, you have the correct monitoring systems in place to combat any illegal working. If by this situation and by this point they're still not satisfied, they may wish to audit your company. This can be announced or it can be a booked-in date. Again, if you are in the position where you are getting audited and you have come across our webinar, do let us know, because we do have tailored and bespoke packages to those who are being audited and have already submitted a sponsor license application. As I said, our team will aim to just submit the application and get an outcome by the 8-week point. But we do just want to flag up the other, application processing scenarios that can arise.
So just taking a little look at the fees that are involved with the sponsor license application and the skilled worker application. Just to note, these are only the Home Office fees. These are not reflective of our fees. So starting with the sponsor license application fee, there is only one fee that you need to make to submit the application. So that being £536 for small or charitable sponsors. So this being 1 to 50 employees. Or £1,476 for larger companies consisting of 50 or more employees. So you will need to pay a certificate of sponsorship assignment fee of £199, and that is for all applicants making a skilled worker visa application. You will also need to pay for the skilled worker application fee, so that being £625 if applying from abroad, or £704 if applying from the UK. You will also need to pay an immigration skills charge, and that is £364 per year and £1,092 for 3 years, and an immigration health surcharge. So that gives you access to the NHS, and that's £624 per year and £1,872 for 3 years. But the important thing to note with these fees is that depending on your current situation and your status, if you're in the UK, you may not always be liable to pay for the immigration skills charge and the immigration health surcharge. But again, this varies on a case-to-case basis.
Just touching base on the fees, our professional fees right now as it stands, we do quote £6,500 for our bundle package that we offer. So that includes one sponsor license application and also a skilled worker visa application included within that. If you would like a more tailored quotation or you have a variation in your application that you would like to discuss, please do contact us for a tailored quote. So for the final segment of our webinar today, we will be looking more closely at some case studies, just to give you a bit more of an insight into what it is that we do here at Woodcock Law Notary Public and some of the case studies that we have dealt with whilst working on sponsor licenses. So I will just go first with the one that I have been working on as a long-term client of mine. So it is a halal butchers located in Sheffield. They did contact me because they had about 3 different branches open around the northern region, and they had barely any staff, and they didn't know that they needed a sponsor license to recruit more individuals. They were under the impression that we could just go ahead with the visa application. So as much as it was a surprise to them, we needed to start the sponsor license application. Thankfully, they had quite a few of the documentation, so it was just a process of getting the documents together, making sure they were in order in line with Appendix A of the sponsor guidance notes, and making sure that they were submitted. I'm glad to inform you that they have been submitted for the sponsor license and they have been granted as well. And since then, we have partnered with them to bring over 15 skilled workers from Pakistan who have filled in the butcher roles that they have. And we are working with them to get a sponsor license for other companies that they do also have and would like a sponsor license for. I know my situation is very different to Roshni's, who was a bit more complex, so I'll let Roshni explain hers.
Yeah, so another sector that we did tap into was the beautician sector. So again, very different from the halal butchers. But so with the beauticians, we were approached by this particular client, and it was a newly incorporated company. So at the time, the individual, she didn't have many documents or, HR system in place at the time of approaching us. So when submitting her application, she was audited, and obviously with very little understanding of how or what she was meant to be doing in order to be deemed compliant. She did approach us asking for assistance with this, and this was something that we were able to help with. So what we offered her was a mock audit package, and this is where we were able to assess the HR system that she currently has and adapt it to ensure that it was compliant with the Home Office. And we prepared her for any necessary questions that they may ask. So upon the audit taking place, her sponsor license was subsequently granted, and since then she has expanded her business quite significantly, actually. So starting off with just 2 employees working for the company to now having 10 employees working for the company. So quite a massive improvement for her business, and she is doing quite well as it stands.
So as you can see on our on the screen right now, we have partnered with so many different businesses. If you yourself identify one of these businesses and you're watching our webinar today and also currently struggling to recruit or maintain your staff levels, and do get in contact with us, because it may be that you are after a sponsor license but you are just unaware of it, like the butchers that I work with. Or alternatively, you may be, asked for an audit by the Home Office and you're not sure where to go about with this, like Roshni's example. So again, it is something that we can assist with, and we are more than, we are looking forward to helping you with this situation. Okay, so just to conclude this webinar, we wanted to share some of our top tips, since we have been working in, this industry for quite some time, and we've both, I think, had our fair share of clients who have had more complicated issues than the average application. So top tips that I just wanted to run through. So as mentioned earlier on in the webinar, we have gone through the supporting documentation in quite intense detail. So as I mentioned, although it is 4 as a minimum, we would suggest hitting the 5 to 6 region if you can. Again, if your company is able to register for VAT, speak to your accountant and get the company registered, because it is a credible piece of evidence that we can use. As Roshni mentioned earlier on, the authorising officer, though we would love to, employ anyone as an authorising officer and put them down for that position, it is better to have someone who's already a British citizen and filling a HR position in the company, just because it makes the process a lot more smoother. Moving on to HR systems, we would recommend that you have your HR system as up to date as you can. So things like make sure the right to work check is completed and all ID documents of your employee are on the system and have been, checked by the director and the HR team. Things like that really, really do help you, especially when it comes to audits. Registering with relevant governing bodies. So as mentioned, if you are in the food industry and you've got things like the food governing standards, accreditation, then things like that are really, really helpful. If you're in the process of registering and you want to discuss this with us, then do let us know, as I know paperwork can vary from place to place. And finally, business bank account. If you have been flagged up in our consultation about your company being a potential startup, or your business bank account isn't the right sort of account for the Home Office's purposes, then this is something to just bear in mind. So when you do come through to the screening process, do be wary that we'll be asking you who you bank with, so that we can make sure you tick off both of the boxes that you can see on your screen. So being authorised by the FCA and also being approved by the Bank of England. So those are some of our top tips that we have just through our process that we've gone through. I am going to just speak about our consultation one last time. So if you have managed to get through to the end of our webinar, we do thank you for attending this webinar. And we do just want to reiterate that we do offer free 10-minute consultations for anyone who has watched this webinar and is looking to get in touch regarding the sponsor license process, or equally if they want to speak to Roshni about the skilled worker visa process and the bits in between, from getting your sponsor license to then securing and getting your skilled worker here in the UK. So we are offering an exclusive free 10-minute consultation to those who have watched our webinar and quote in any of the inquiry formats that we have available. We are looking forward to hearing from some of you who have reached out today, and for those who have tuned in to watch this webinar live. And again, we are more than happy to take forward your discussions and your calls. So I'll let Roshni wrap up.
Okay, as Pakia did say, we do thank you for watching this webinar and staying with us up until this point. If you would like to get in touch with us about anything that was discussed during this webinar, please feel free to contact us on the number on your screen and info@woodcocklaw.co.uk. We are very heavy on our emails, so we're always monitoring it, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. As mentioned again by Pakia, we do offer free 10-minute consultations, so please do not hesitate to get in touch with us, and we would be more than happy to take the process forward with you.
Just a reminder, and if you were at the start of this webinar, we have also put our LinkedIn details. So if you do want to contact us directly and not through the modes that you can see on your screen right now, please do feel free to connect via LinkedIn. We're more than happy to assist. We hope you found this an informative 30-minute session, and we look forward to seeing you soon.